Well, guys, I mentioned this in a live feed that I was going to shoot this video today. I shot a video earlier that went up, kind of not the typical video, but you probably already saw it because today is Tuesday for you guys. And that video went up on Thursday, last week. So what are we talking about? You saw it in the title. We're going to talk about the differences in blade shapes. So before I get into it too far, you know what time it is. If you're watching on headphones, turn down the volume because here comes a little bit of music. Guys, like I said earlier, I've talked about blade shapes and specific blade shapes in videos, but what I'm going to look at today is just kind of like the main types of blade shapes. There's a handful of them out there. We're going to look at 4 or 5. So I'm kind of going to group some stuff together because you have Wharncliffe and sheep's foot, and you have drop point, clip point. You've got recurves, you've got tontos, but then you've got combinations too, like you have a recurve tonto, things like that. So that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at all these knives, and we're going to look at like each one individually, and talk about its points, what it's good for, the things that I think that they're good for, and their limitations and things like that. So give me a minute, I'll get everything put together, and we'll start looking at them. And I think we're only going to film it this way. I don't think we really need to get down on top of it from above and get any close-up stuff. So hang on just a second. Okay, so the first blade shape we're going to talk about is Wharncliffe, which is, it's pretty much, I like to say it's my favorite, but I do know it has my limitations. So Wharncliffe, or sheep's foot, however you want to look at it, sheep's foot a lot of times are a little stubbier. They don't have as much of a piercing tip. They're a lot more rounded, broader blade. But this is a Wharncliffe. So is my design that I made, the sea snake. Sorry, I've got windows open because it's kind of hot in the kitchen and there's a aircraft flying over. But like I said, these are really good because if you're using a Wharncliffe, you have this whole edge where you're cutting, and they come in handy. They're really good for maritime use. Wharncliffes and sheepfoot are historically the type of like sailor's knives you would see. And a lot of times they're coupled with a marlin spike for moving line and things like that. These are really nice because you can get up under something. Say you're wanting to cut something, but you don't want to cut anything underneath it. You can get the point of that up under, you can push through, and you're cutting here, and it's not rounded. You're not getting your tip down into the whatever it is underneath. They're pretty good. If you're cutting across something, you don't reach a point where, say, this knife is like that, and we'll use this as an example. If I'm cutting with this knife, I'll reach a point where I lose my cutting potential because it slips off, because that is rounded and I get up onto that belly. With something like this, you can cut consistently with the same pressure all the way to the tip before it would slip off, as opposed to, like I said, slipping off. Like it's cutting, and then I lose that cutting potential. Now, the bad thing about these are if you're cutting something and you don't want to pierce what you're cutting, say, okay, let's talk about like skinning an animal. And you're trying to not pierce the hide, or you're trying not to pierce the gut. They are not great for that because they have that acute tip at it, and it's right where you're cutting, and they have a tendency to punch through. I will say for fine detail work, these are nice because you can get way up on them and use that front part of the blade and just get some control and cut around things. There are several woodworking blades that are shaped in the Wharncliffe fashion. I love this knife because it's small. I can get up on it and I can do fine little detail work, cutting out patterns, cutting out paper, cardboard, things like that, almost like a utility knife. They're great for that. But like I said, they do have some limitations on some things, but so does every design. There is no one blade sheep that's going to be perfect for everything. So there's the Wharncliffe sheep's foot part of it. Like I said, I typically will take one of these over a lot of the other blade shapes, but I like all of them to an extent. I'm not such a big fan of the Tonto blade shape, just a typical Tonto. So let's go ahead and then we're gonna move on. So next blade shape that I love this blade shape, and I brought my CJRB Rhea out for this. This is drop point, clip point. I don't have a lot of like actual clip point blades, but the thing is with a clip point or drop point, you're not getting much of a difference. What you're getting is the basic difference in the blade shape is at the spine. Then you have buoys and things like that, but they're all basically blade shape is the same. And on a lot of those, what you have is a flat area here and then a rounded belly area. And these are really nice because you can use this for multiple things. Now, I do know there are other blade shapes, like there are completely rounded skinners and things like that, specific purpose knives, and they are beautiful for that. But you can get away in a pinch a lot of times with a knife like this or the Rhea. And it's because you have a flat area from heel to usually mid-knife, sometimes more towards the tip where it starts to transition. So this one is a little bit more towards the tip than the Rhea. And so what you get is you get a nice straight edge area for doing tasks where you're cutting down on things like you would get with a Wharncliffe or a sheep's foot. But then you have this belly area, which is nice for cutting where you don't necessarily want to pierce through what you're cutting. Skinning knives typically have a very rounded blade shape. Bowie knives have got a nice straight and then up. Clip point, drop points, they all have basically that same blade shape where it comes up and then it begins to transition up to the tip, as opposed with a Wharncliffe or sheep's foot where you have the straight and then the back sweeps up to catch up with the edge. These are great, great, great knives to use for all around outdoor activities. If you happen to be an outdoorsman and you might be hunting, you could skin an animal with this. You could process an animal with this. I have made a version of the sea snake that is a drop point. I call it the habu. Now, mine is much shorter in the straight area than this, but like I said, you have that belly where you can get up and you can work under something and use that area. That way you're not hitting the tip of that blade. You can work around things, meat processing, things like that. They come in really handy. They're great. I like the Warnies because I'm not doing a lot of outdoor activities, and I find them for my day-to-day use a little bit more along the lines of what I would use every day. However, the majority of my knives in my collection are clip point, drop point style blades. I only own a couple of the Warnies. Like I said, this one, nice drop point, sweeping up, comes down, nice blade profile. As far as clip point versus drop point, the only thing I really see in a difference is the aesthetics. What do you want the knife to look like? Clip point blades are kind of cool looking. They are kind of aggressive and things like that, but you know, I'm perfectly fine with the drop point. So drop point, clip point, buoys, all those traditional style blade shapes that you would see, that you think of as traditional blade shapes, they fall into that. And then you have different variations, like this is kind of the same. People would say this is a clip point, maybe a reverse Tonto. I would consider this a clip point because of how it comes down like that. You've got a flat, then you've got a belly. This is the Benchmade 940. I put it in the same category as clip point, drop point, buoy, reverse Tonto, if you want to call it that. I call this more of a clip point because the tip's been clipped off. The point has been clipped down. This one is kind of the same. This is pretty much all belly up, and then it drops down really well. This is the CJRB Centros. Another really useful knife, but as you can see, this one does not have as much belly. It's really pointed. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. So that is clip point, drop point, buoy, however you want to look at it. So let me get this stuff right. I don't want to have everything out all at once, guys, so I will pause here. We'll go to the next one. So the next blade style, blade shape we're going to talk about are recurves. Now, I do like recurves. I have several recurves. Matter of fact, have one in my pocket that I'm going to break out, which is going to be kind of the last blade shape we talk about because I only own one. But the recurve blade shape is really, really effective for a lot of things. You basically maximize your surface area for cutting and your potential, the power potential, because when you have that recurve, material gets in here and then it's forced as you're cutting, it's forced into this area and then up. And you really get a lot of cutting power and potential in that. And there's another knife that does that, which is the next one we're going to talk about. But just like the reason I didn't mention the thing that is a limitation on the clip point drop point is because I knew I was going to mention this. You still have that area where, yes, I've got so much cutting potential to here, but then this tip sweeps up steeply and it's really hard. Like if you're cutting like this, when you get to this point, it just kind of, you lose that. But the cutting potential you get in this area is great. And there's a reason that the Gurkha's kukri is shaped like that, because if you swing that, you have maximized the impact capability of that with this big heavy belly forward, this area here. And so if you're slashing, it forces material up in. Another very, very, sorry, I got something in my eyes, guys. Hang on, just sorry about that, guys. I got an eyelash in my eye. It still kind of hurts, but I got it out. So in a slash, this is terrifying. And I have a knife that was specifically designed that way so that you can, just as an example, this is the Spyderco Matriarch 2. And in a self-defense roll, this design is going to be incredibly effective because you have all of this cutting area here. This is an S-shaped blade. It's more than just a recurve. It's actually almost a double recurve. It comes down here, it comes up, and then it comes back down. So it starts low, comes up, and then comes back down. It technically is a double recurve if you look at that shape. And what you've got is, I've got cutting potential here, and I'm forcing that into the material, and then I'm cutting through, and I've just bunched all of that, I guess, flesh, if you're gonna use this in a self-defense roll, which is what this was for, into that. Recurves give you some incredible cutting power. The Minax, the Ferrum Forge designed Minax by We Knife Company, the We Knife Minax designed by Ferrum Forge, I should say. Incredibly good cutter. I used it on the job site a lot, as long as you're doing specific cutting and you don't need a Wharncliffe to keep from slipping off. Incredibly good cutter. Now, the fault with this is this one not so much. This one's not so bad to sharpen, but some of these, like this one with this very deep recurve on this cold steel Spartan, still one of my all-time favorite hard use knives. That deep recurve on that is going to make it a challenge to sharpen for some people. I mean, you have options. So the recurve, one of the handiest things. Sorry about that, guys. They got the Cobra gunships flying over, and they are so loud. They weren't even close. I went out to look when I paused it. So what I was saying is, one of the handiest things that you can have if you own recurves is a ceramic rod, because that radius will get right down in there. This one has come in handy. Just you know, throw it out there. I got this from Edge Pro. Edge Pro actually has kitchen ceramic rods. But when you have a recurve, something like this is nice to have to touch up your edge. For sharpening, you have to have specific stones that will get down in that recurve. So recurves give you a lot of cutting potential, but they do have a couple of limitations, one of them being the sharpening, and the other one, there's a good chunk of that blade where, in my opinion, this portion of the blade from about here up is kind of worthless. Because to use it, you've got to be at a weird angle to get parallel with, or perpendicular, however you want to look at it, with your cut, with what you're cutting. They work really well for certain things, but then you lose that front, let's say, quarter of the blade, because it really is at such a swept up angle after the recurve that you just kind of don't get a lot out of it. So let me go get the next round of knives for you guys. So the next knives we're going to talk about are Tontos. And I know a lot of people love Tontos, but the Tontos that everyone sees are not typically traditional Tontos. Japanese Tontos are a little bit different. They're swept up. They look like a lot like, let's go ahead and say the knife that typically I would associate looking the closest to a traditional Japanese Tonto would be the Benchmade 940. It comes up and then it sweeps up abruptly at the very tip. But the typical knife that you're going to see that is considered a Tonto is the Americanized Tonto. And I only own 2 true Tontos. This one actually is a double Tonto. If you were to look, that blade shape is just 2 Tontos put together to make their Spartan style blade. from Microtech. But the thing with this is you have a very, very, very straight cutting angle here and an abrupt angle change. And what you get is a secondary point. So not only do I have that piercing point there, this point here actually is very, very good for a defensive roll. And I'm going to explain why, because I have another knife that I'm going to show you as soon as I go reclaim it. This wasn't the one I was going to grab, but you guys seem to love it when this knife comes out in the videos. So this style knife, if you're carrying it in a self-defense roll, one of the primary things you learn when you learn martial arts and you learn knife fighting techniques and weapons fighting, and I'm going to be real careful because I don't want to hit myself with this heavy lanyard here, but it's a snap cut. And what a snap cut is, it's simply that. You snap it out and you make contact. Now, this knife is very sharp and it is going to give you a cut. However, you're hitting with all of that, and all of that energy is being distributed across that entire area of the blade, whatever part of the blade makes contact. I don't know what they're doing today. So I don't know what they're doing today, guys. I keep having to cut and edit because of this. So what I was saying is that force is distributed across that entire area of the edge where it makes contact. Usually about, to tell you the truth, it's usually between 1.5 inches and 2 inches, that blade. So all of that force that I'm generating with that snap cut, just a snap of my wrist, is being spread across an area of about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. It's gonna lay a cut, right? Because that's really, really sharp. However, if I do the same thing with this, what I have is I have a secondary point, and what that's going to do is that's gonna break the surface tension of the skin, and a snap cut from a Tonto, pow. This one is we're going to talk about next, but this one as well. If I was to snap cut with this, you are basically breaking the surface tension, because as opposed to that being distributed across 1.5 inch, 2 inch section of blade, you have maximized the impact to one point that's going to break through, and the rest of that knife follows through. It's like a wedge coming in. So in a defensive roll, not only can I stab and poke, I can snap, cut, and slash really well. They are incredibly good in a defensive tactical style roll. They don't offer a lot when it comes to day-to-day, everyday carry, because you have limited the use. And the fact is, that area of the blade is going to be the first part that gets dull. That is the part that's going to accept all of that cutting potential, whether you're cutting this way, or if you're snap cutting, however you're using it. If you're using it in a day-to-day EDC roll, that part is what's going to get dull the fastest, because one, it's two angles, it comes up, it's a point. It's not a flat, it's not a rounded edge. So you're limited on that, and that part of that blade is going to get dull faster than the rest of the knife, especially depending on how you're using it and what you're cutting. So while they are great for certain things, they're incredibly good at piercing, incredibly good at snap cut, defensive roll, self-defense, one of the blades I would recommend to go along with that double recurve S-shaped blade on the Spyderco Matriarch 2, which is an incredibly well-designed self-defense tool. Same with this. This is a piercing blade, but it also has basically two Tontos. You're gonna get that same effect from this Spartan style blade. They are limited roll knives. I know a lot of people love them. I'm not such a big fan of just the Americanized Tonto style blade. I do understand their limitations and uses, and I would never get rid of this, one, because my daughter loves it, and two, this is probably one of the best thin little Tontos you could get, because it's going to be in a really good way to use it for defense. Which brings us to this little hybrid that I have a couple examples of, and I do like these better than just your standard Americanized Tonto, because a lot of times these are a lot more useful for day-to-day use, but still give you some of the, it gives you some of the qualities of a Tonto, but also provides you with a heavier use knife, which is the Recurve Tonto. So what a Recurve Tonto is, it's simply that. Typically what you'll have is a recurve blade, and then it sweeps up like a drop point at the front, but you have that secondary point. This is my Heretic Knives Medusa that was a gift. And this is a really good blade shape, cuts really well. It's got a nice little belly, like a recurve belly in there, and then a forward belly. So you can use it, it's like having two knives. But it does have, if I was slashing or snap cutting, it does have that area here. And this one has a typical, almost like a Japanese style Tonto, where it has a thicker spot here to reinforce that forward point, and that's where the angles meet. So you basically have two distinct grinds on this knife. A great example, and this gets used all the time, is my Norseman. Big, long, recurved area, nice, rounded area at the front where you have basically two different style knives, but I could lay a devastating self-defense wound on someone because, like I said, that's a wedge. That's like having two piercing points on a knife. So in a defensive role, could I use this? Absolutely. This would be devastating in a self-defense role. If you know how to use it, if you're comfortable in taking martial arts and comfortable using edged weapons. So does it have limitations? Oh, absolutely. It basically has the same limitations as a recurve and a Tonto put together, with another one, which is that forward swept edge. This would be your primary cutting. And then this is like fine detail work up at the front. I use this all the time for fine detail work because it's really comfortable. I can get up on that. I can use it for fine detail work up front. And then I have the recurve area for deep, heavy cutting. And like I said, and then it has that forward point, or that's that secondary point for a snap cut or for a slash. Devastating, devastating, devastating cuts can be laid with either one of these if you're using it as self-defense role. So what's the point of the whole video? Well, the point of the whole video is there is no one blade shape that fits the bill for everything. People have preferences. I have preferences. If you like a Tonto, hey, that's fine. If you use it in a day-to-day and you don't have a problem with having to touch that up or bring that point back so that you have that point, that's great. That's a great thing. The fact is that there are blade shapes for everyone, and that's, to quote Nick Shabazz, it's a beautiful thing. So I hope you enjoyed that, Nick. He watches my videos sometimes. So all being said, just like knives, guys. So that's the video that I've been thinking about doing for a little while. There are some other blade shapes that offer different things. I was going to try and throw this one in. I honestly don't see this kukri style, not kukri. Crap, I can't remember what they're called. Chris style blade. I don't see a Chris style blade like this being real good for day-to-day use. I know Cold Steel made one. Some people got them and they thought they looked really cool, and then they thought they were going to love them. And then in actual use, they are a pain, and then they are a nightmare to sharpen. This was an exercise in what can I do? I did sharpen this for my friend Matthew, and it's been here forever because I like having it to show in some videos. So, and it's fun to play with. So that's it, guys. If you like knives, you like them. You know, some people like different things. So that's about all I got on this one. If you guys like the videos, give them a thumbs up. If you don't like them, give them a thumbs down, but try to tell me why. There's videos that went up. There's a video that I did on full 30 that you should go check out because I couldn't do the full video here. If you saw the one about the Olight Balder Mini RL, that is up on full 30, full video. So guys, that's it. I love you all. Check out the stuff in the corners. If you like the videos, like I said, give them a thumbs up. If you don't like them, give them a thumbs down. If you really like them, you can give applause at the bottom for specific videos. And if you really like the channel and want to support it so I can do more things, and order things and purchase things, then please, by all means, join the channel as a member. You get exclusive content, and I do giveaways and things like that. So, guys, I love you all. Take it easy, and I will see you in the next video.